Good day, everybody. I hope that you are well, and I also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today, we'll be doing our grade 7 English lesson on verbs. And before we start, we're going to log on to aplusstudents.ca. Once we've logged on to aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password, and then we're going to select the subject of English Language Arts. We're doing grade 7. And then we're going to scroll down up until we get to our chapter of verbs. So this is a continuation of our previous lesson on verbs, right? So today we are going to be finishing off with our chapter on verbs, but we are going to continue with the other lessons that we did not complete. All right. So we said our chapter is verbs. Our we're doing the subject of English language arts. We're focusing on grade 7. And then the lessons that we are going to be focusing on under the chapter of verbs, we're going to identify transitive and intransitive verbs. And we're going to identify linking verbs, predicate adjectives, as well as predicate nouns. That is going to be our lessons for today. All right. So when it comes to verbs, right, we said that, like I said, this is a continuation of a previous lesson on verbs. Um, So now we're going to continue, right? But we are focusing more on transitive and intransitive verbs, linking verbs, as well as predicate adjectives and predicate nouns. All right, so when it comes to verbs, we have action verbs, and action verbs can be either transitive or action verbs can be intransitive. And with an action verb, right, or when an action verb is transitive, then it means that it is followed by a direct object. So once a action verb is transitive, once we have a transitive verb, then it means that that verb is followed by a direct object. And a direct object, right, it is either the pronoun or it is the noun or it is a noun phrase that receives the action of the verb. That is the direct object. So once again, we see that a direct object is either the pronoun or it can be the noun or it can be the noun phrase that receives the action of a verb. And in order for us to find the direct object within a sentence, you need to ask yourself what the verb is acting on or whom the verb is acting on. So, what or whom the verb is acting on. And if we look at an example, right, where we are going to identify a transitive verb, and then it says, Joan walked her dog. So, Joan walked her dog. And if we were to identify the transitive verb, then we need to ask ourselves, what did Joan walk or whom did Joan walk in order for us to get the transitive verb or to identify the transitive verb? Then we can say that Joan walked her dog. So her dog, that is the direct object, right? And the verb that is transitive is walked. So walked is our verb, it's the action. But now we need to ask ourselves, what Joan walked or whom did Joan walk? And then we can say it's her dog. So our direct object is her dog. All right. So that is our transitive verbs, right? We say that when a verb is transitive, when it's a transitive verb, then it means that the transitive verb is then followed by a direct object, right? And the direct object within that sentence, right? It is either the pronoun or it is a noun or it is a noun phrase that receives the action of a verb. So we need to ask ourselves what the verb is acting on, the sentence is acting on, or what it is acting on. So what or whom it is acting on. And then we have an intransitive verb. So once the action verb is intransitive, then it means that it does not have a direct object that it is acting on. It doesn't have a direct object. For example, Joan walked around the block. So it does not have a direct object. It says Joan walked around the block. So now the question is, what did Joan walk, or whom did Joan walk, right? And it doesn't tell us what or whom Joan walked, because there's no direct object within that sentence. No direct object to even answer that question of what or whom Joan walked. And when it comes to the intransitive verb, right, the verb walked, we say it is intransitive within the sentence because it does not have a direct object. So if we basically look at if we compare a transitive as well as an intransitive verb, then we say a transitive verb has a direct object, or it's followed by a direct object. It tells us whom or what the person is doing, or what that is being done. But when it comes to an intransitive verb does not have a direct object. It cannot answer the question of what or whom. And remember, we say that the action verb, it's either intransitive or it is transitive, right? And when an action verb is followed immediately by a prepositional phrase, then we can also say that it is intransitive. So immediately when an action verb is followed by a prepositional phrase, then we say it is intransitive. Because the noun or the pronoun or the noun phrase in a prepositional phrase, it is never a direct object. And then we also have linking verbs. And linking verbs, we always say that it is we always say that it is intransitive. Linking verbs are intransitive. Right? So linking verbs are intransitive, and it means that the noun, the pronoun, or the noun phrase that follows that linking verb describes or it renames the subject. It does not tell whom, or it doesn't tell what the verb is acting on. So it doesn't tell whom the verb is acting on or what the noun is or the verb is acting on. And if we look at an example, right, then we say Joan was a nurse for 25 years before her retirement. So Joan was a nurse for 25 years before her retirement. And if you look at an example, right? Once again, we say Joan was a nurse for 25 years before retirement. And if we look at that specific sentence, then the verb was. We say the verb was is a linking verb. And the noun phrase within that sentence, right, that renames the subject, it is Joan. So the noun phrase, which is a nurse, it renames the subject, which is Joan, because Joan, who is the subject, we also say that it is a nurse or she's a nurse. All right. So once again, we said that we have verbs, we have intransitive verbs, and we have transitive verbs, right? When it comes to transitive verbs, right, then it means that when an action verb is transitive, it is followed by a direct object. Meaning that if we were to ask ourselves whom it is acting on or what is it is acting on, then we will be able to identify the direct object. It is either the pronoun, the noun, or the noun phrase that receives the action of the verb. And then when it is intransitive, right, then it means that it does not have a direct object. It does not answer the question of whom it is acting on or what it is acting on, right? All right, so now we're going to aplusstudents.ca and we're going to identify transitive and intransitive verbs. And we're also going to identify linking verbs, predicate adjectives, as well as predicate nouns. All right, so we're first going to identify transitive and intransitive verbs. All right, and remember we said that when a verb is transitive, it is followed by a direct object, and when it is intransitive, it is not followed by a direct object. Right? All right, so now we're going to our test where we are going to identify either if it is a transitive verb or whether it is an intransitive verb. All right, so it says we need to select the action verb, right? We need to say if the verb is either transitive or if the verb is intransitive. It says option one, Olympus Mons, a massive shield. Okay, it says Olympus Mons, a massive shield volcano on Mars covers an area about the size of Arizona? Or is it option two, the same sentence, but now if we look at the word in bold, covers an area, option one, covers an area about the size of Arizona, or option two, volcano on Mars? We need to say, we need to identify whether it is intransitive. We need to say whether the verb is transitive, and we need to also select the direct object. So which one is correct? We need to say, we need to select the action verb if the verb is transitive, and also select the direct object. So is it option one, covers an area about the size of Arizona, or option two, volcano on Mars? Which one is correct? So option one or option two? And if we were to choose the correct option, whether it is option one, covers an area about the size of Arizona, or option two, volcano on Mars, and then we will say, if we were to find the verb that is transitive and also the direct object, then we'll go with option one, covers an area about the size of Arizona. So option one is correct. All right, the next one says we need to select the action verb. If the verb is transitive, also select the direct object, right? It says the 1964 disappearance of three civil rights workers in Mississippi ignited a national discussion about race relations in the United States. So we need to look at the word in bold, right? And then identify the verb that is transitive as well as the direct object. So is it option one, national discussion about race relations in the United States, or option two, ignited a national discussion about race relations in the United States? Option one or option two? Which one is correct? So, option one, national discussion about race relations in the United States, or option two, ignited a national discussion about race relations in the United States. Which one is correct? All right, and if we were to choose the correct option, because remember they say we need to identify the verb that is transitive and the direct object, so we'll go with option two, ignited a national discussion about race relations in the United States. All right, the next one says we need to select the verb that is transitive and also the direct object. It says English actor Daniel Day Lewis won several major awards for the principal role in the film Lincoln. So, if we were to identify the verb, the transitive verb, and the direct object, Is it option one, won several major awards, or option two, several major awards? So option one, won several major awards, or option two, several major awards. Which one is correct? And if we were to choose the correct option, and then we can say won several major awards. All right. The next one says we need to select the action verb. If the verb is transitive, then also select the direct object. It says the master sushi chef carefully filleted the tuna for the delectable sushi rolls. For the delectable sushi rolls. So we need to say if the word in bold is either a verb that is transitive, and also we need to select the direct object. So is it option one, the tuna, or option two, filleted the tuna? Which one is correct? The tuna or filleted the tuna? So option one or option two? All right, and if we were to choose the correct option, whether it is the tuna or filleted the tuna, and then we'll go with option two, filleted the tuna. Yes, so filleted the tuna is correct. We need to select the action verb, and if the verb is transitive, then we need to select the direct object. It says option one, on its maiden voyage, the RMS Titanic collided with an iceberg in the freezing water of the North Atlantic. So we need to select the verb that is transitive. Is it option one, collided, or option two, collided and then freezing? All right, so we need to say if it is collided or collided and freezing. Which one is correct? And if we were to choose the correct option, then yes, collided is the transitive verb. All right, the next one says we need to select the action verb, and if the verb is transitive, then we also need to select the direct object. It says just 10 minutes of moderate exercise ele- alleviates or elevates brain activity. So if we were to select the transitive verb, is it option one, elevates brain activity, or option two, brain activities? What does it do? So do we say it elevates brain activity or brain activity? We need to select the verb that is transitive. All right, and if we were to choose the correct option, elevates brain activity or brain activities, and then we'll go with elevates brain activities. And that is our transitive verb and a direct object. And we're going to identify linking verbs, predicate adjectives, as well as predicate nouns. And a linking verb, right? And we said a linking verb is a verb that connects a subject to an adjective or to a noun in the predicate. And when it comes to a linking verb, a linking verb does not show action. So that is linking verbs. Remember, a linking verb, it connects a subject to the adjective or the noun. A predicate adjective, right? It describes the subject. Tell us either who or what is doing something. So it describes the subject, right? For example, dark chocolate cake that Julie baked tastes incredibly rich. So predicate noun, we said it identifies and it renames the subject. So it's almost like saying that my mother is the most driven salesperson in the division. It means that my mother, another name for my mother is salesperson. All right. So now we're going on to our test, where we are going to identify linking verbs, predicate adjectives, and predicate nouns. Okay. It says, after 3 days of careful deliberation, the jurors remained undecided about the verdict. So we need to select the linking verb and predicate noun or predicate adjective. Is it option one, rename undecided, or option two, rename? We need to select the linking verb. All right. And if we were to choose the correct word, right, that is either linking verb and the predicate noun or the predicate adjective. All right. And if we were to choose the correct option, yes, and then we will choose the first one, which is remain undecided. Option one, sorry, remain undecided. The next one says the forbidden island of Nihar is a private island with few inhabitants. Is geologically the oldest of the Hawaiian islands, or is it option two? All right, and if we were to select either the linking verbs and the predicate noun or predicate adjective, right? This is the last one. And then we will choose is oldest. So the first one is correct. All right, so this is the end of our verbs, right? We said we have verbs that are either transitive or intransitive. We have linking verb, prepositional noun, prepositional or prepositional phrases. All right, so this is the end of our lesson. Thank you very much for joining the class, and I really hope that you're going to have a good evening further. So till next time, goodbye. All right. So this is the end of our lesson. Thank you very much for joining, and I really hope you're going to have a good evening further. Goodbye.